She had no intention of remaining by his side for the entire evening if he proved his usual intolerable self. At least it was for a good cause, she thought gloomily, as Richard gave another impatient pull on her arm. "Stop it," she hissed, and then smiled at the bouncers as she handed over her pass. "You're not hauling around a bag of golf clubs." Richard also produced his pass, but dispensed with the smile. A muscle flexed in his jaw, but he said nothing until they were inside the hotel foyer. "I don't carry my golf clubs," he eventually remarked. "That's what a caddy is for." First eye roll of the night. The hub of voices in the room was almost as loud as the throngs of paparazzi outside, only here the shouted demands were replaced by shrieks of recognition and social giggles. Lainie was an adamant city girl, but for a second she thought wistfully of a quiet spot in the countryside, where the only noise came from birds and trickling water, and probably wasps, heavy machinery, meatworks and cattle trucks, she acknowledged a moment later with a faint smile. The peaceful haven of her imagination had more in common with Larkrise to Candleford than the 21st century. Occupational hazard. Too much time spent amongst artificial sets. Slight loss of grip on reality. Richard handed her a cocktail glass from a waiter's passing tray, and then ruined the polite gesture by frowning in the direction of her breasts and asking, "Did your stylist choose that?" She took a very large gulp of fruit-laced vodka. "I don't have a stylist," she said grimly, resisting the urge to make self-conscious tugs and adjustments to her dress, which was fine. It was a perfectly simple LBD with a classy amount of cleavage. Richard sipped gingerly from his own glass, looking into it as if he suspected lacings of cyanide. He must have been quite good in Hamlet, she noted absently. "Have you considered hiring one?" he asked, in tones of friendly interest. Thousands of pounds for shining lights. She put a mental heel on her growing irritation and ground it into the very fancy parquet floor. She tried not to imagine Richard's face was under there also. "Darlings!" Greta French arrived in a wash of air, kisses, and perfume. The chat show matriarch was the only three-dimensional human Lainie had ever met who actually addressed people she had neither slept with nor conceived as darling. Greta beamed at them. Her nose was all but twitching as she scented material for her 2:05 gossip slot. Lainie felt Richard's biceps shifting against her shoulder. She told herself it was an impatient fidget. He probably wouldn't clock the woman, however tempting it might be. "I had no idea," Greta went on, looking from one to the other of them. "Elaine, you sly thing. You didn't utter a peep when we had our little chat about Will last week." Her voice was hushed and confidential. An eavesdropper, and there were at least 4 in Lainie's direct line of sight, could be forgiven for thinking that she made a habit of phoning Auntie Greta in tears after every romantic disaster. The little chat in question had consisted of Greta ambushing her in the yogurt section of Waitrose and making snide digs about Will's obvious preference for silicone. Richard smiled back at Greta. It was a completely manufactured, calculated movement that had nothing whatsoever to do with genuine feeling. That didn't lessen the impact. Eyes became more blue. Interesting lines and dimples appeared around firm lips, and a face that could be overly severe in repose became almost mythically handsome. Even Lainie's heart gave an extra thump in response, and she still wanted to upend her cocktail over his smug, shapely head. "No idea about what?" Richard asked, his words blandly curious. He took another sip from his own glass and managed to skip the aftertaste blench this time. It was a fairly horrible drink. Greta looked slightly discomposed. She blinked under the dual threat of the smile and the purring lack of response. "Well," she said, tearing her eyes from Richard's mouth with some difficulty. Her gaze kept drifting back like a fly unable to pull its feet from sticky spider webbing. She looked meaningfully at Lainie.